I'm Mike Sullivan. Today we'll be answering a question from a viewer about forearm rotation and wrist hinge during the golf swing. Okay, so we have a question from Len. He just sent this in to us yesterday. He says, "Hi Mike, I found your YouTube instruction some of the most helpful available. Thank you very much." I'm glad to hear that, Len. He's hoping that we could consider two topics on our channel. He says, first, the role of forearm rotation on the backswing and on the downswing. He asks, is this forearm rotation deliberate or is it something that should just happen automatically? The second question is, he'd like to know, does the right wrist hinge straight up and down like the left, or bend back on itself? He's heard both explanations, and we're gonna take a look at that. So let's start first about the forearm rotation. So I'm gonna set this phone down for just a second here, and let's talk about that. You know, this is something that I think, it really is something that should happen automatically for people, but I do think that some people need to kind of catch the gist of the concept. And here's the gist of the concept. If we were gonna hit a golf ball up on a tee, teed up waist height, or if we had a baseball on a tee, we're gonna hit with a baseball bat, most people would turn back away from that baseball or from that golf ball. We'll even talk baseball for now. They would turn back, and if you can get a look at what's happening with my club face as I turn back, that club face you can see is opening, starting to point towards the sky right now. And then as I would come back to hit that baseball, the club face would start to square up here through impact, and then it would roll over, it would start to point down towards the ground through the end of my swing. So for most people, this process is forearm rotation, and it's pretty automatic for most people, but not for everybody. I've worked with people where I've asked them to pick up their golf club and just kind of turn back like this, and rather than seeing that club face start to rotate upwards, rotating because my forearms are rotating, what we see from some people is this sort of a move where the club face kind of stays, the toe still stays up throughout the course of that backswing. So that person, it helps them out to learn a little bit of this concept. Once someone gets that concept where they think, okay, I turn back, rotate, turn through and rotate, they start to do a lot better. I think at first, if someone is probably more of a newer golfer, they may have to think a little bit about that rotation back and the rotation through. Whenever I try to think about consciously rotating my forearms, I can never time up what that club face should be doing at impact, and it's not good. And just think of it like this. If I were to toss a ball sidearm and I turn back, my palm starts pointing a little bit more towards the sky, and then as it comes through and we release it, there's rotation where it rotates over. And this is forearm rotation taking place. And you would never really think about that if you were tossing a ball sidearm. So that's a great question. And I would say all those things are really possible a little bit. At first, we do have to get a handle and understanding that yes, there's rotation, but once we make a couple of practice swings this way, we probably don't want to think about it too much. And the thinking we would do would really be our brain learning the timing of how to make the club face work through impact. And one other thing I like to point out, if you've ever hit balls with a launch monitor or seen any of the launch monitor videos out there, you'll see a lot of golfers, when they actually make contact with that golf ball, that club face is actually open a little bit as they're making contact and closing as the ball rolls up the face. So they're not perfectly square timing it out anyway, and they hit a lot of really good shots. So now on to the second question, and this is one that I'm thinking about here a little bit. The question is, does the right wrist hinge straight up like the left or bend back on itself? So as I'm just kind of walking through that question, we think about, okay, left wrist hinges up, or the top hand hinges up. We really do want our wrist hinging in this manner. And depending on my grip, you can see if my hands roll inward a little bit, they hinge up. If they roll outward, it's hard to hinge them actually, okay? But they really are gonna hinge up. But a good way to really make this applicable is to think about swing plane. So I'm gonna put a shaft on the ground as if I was gonna hit a ball back here towards our building to get a sense of the target line. So you can see I've got this ball on this imaginary line here. Well, what I wanna do is I am gonna have that right wrist and left wrist both hinge, Now, depending on how we place the right hand on the club, if I place the right hand on underneath the club like this, and I hinge this right wrist or my wrist anatomically, I'm gonna have a really flat backswing. If I put my right wrist on, or my right hand on a little bit more on top, then I'm more likely to hinge the club more upright. So what I would say is our wrists, to get a really good wrist hinge or wrist cock, they're gonna go straight up. But what's important is how we place that on the club, because that's gonna make it easier to be either really upright if the wrist is on top, or flat if the wrist is on the bottom. So depending on a player's habits, that may dictate how they're gonna put that right hand on the club. So Len, I hope this answers your question for you. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to, you can shoot me an email through the website or respond directly on YouTube. And just remember to keep working on your game. The more you practice, the better concepts you have, the better golf you will play. If you like this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up for a like. And if you subscribe to our channel, you'll be notified by email each time that we produce a new instructional video. Work in the downswing. Maybe you could cover that sometime. So yes, Roy, right now I will, and thank you very much for the comments.